Okay.
Okay, so let's start. Tell me your story, man. I want to hear everything about you.
Okay. So, I guess I got into the industry in, I want to say 2007. Um, First job was selling managed print services, and I had interviewed with a company called Lewan and Associates. And at the time, that was like the only job, you know, that was available at the time. So yeah, I started working there for some random thing that I don't think anybody knew what to do for managed print services, and they were just trying to figure it out. So it was like the Wild West, and what that is trying to manage the printer fleets and put them with the copiers. It's all pretty standard today, but 16, 17 years ago, it was not. So no one really knew what they were doing. They didn't really know how they were going to pay us. So it was a little crazy. And I did that for a couple of years, kind of built it from the ground up. And after doing that, I was like, this kind of sucks. I'd rather just sell copiers because the copier people were making more money. I was doing twice the work, and then not, making the money.
Mhm.
So I kind of was trying to get out of that. They were also trying to move me into management. So they said, hey, before you go into management, you have to become a sales trainer. So I was like, okay, sales training. This sounds great. Um, so I did that for like 6 or 8 months where I was training salespeople. And they were basically, if you wanted to become a manager, you had to train salespeople, then become a manager. And that was the path that they had created. So I did that for 6 months, started moving into the sales management side of it. And then a company called Rico Direct came calling, and they basically recruited me away from Lawan. And at the time, and I want to say early 2009, maybe 2010, if you were in the copier industry, you wanted to work for the manufacturer. You didn't want to work for a dealer because that was where all the best accounts were. It was a little more prestigious to work for a manufacturer. So you did. And so I jumped on that. And then from there, it just kind of worked up. And I started at Rico, and I got kind of the newbie team, which is kind of how they make you learn the business. And so no machines in field, what they call in the industry, and just a lot of accounts that you're just constantly taking these reps cold calling and going out there with them in the field, and just kind of slowly worked my way up in Rico and had like a newbie team, then got a more experienced team, and then I was able to develop some of the reps in there that they got promoted to major account reps. So that I got kind of promoted and um, became basically a director of sales and a regional director. The titles are funny, right? Regional sales manager, I think at one point, and I
Right.
was covering, Grand Junction. What else was I covering? It was pretty crazy. Grand Junction, Fort Collins, Southern Colorado, Colorado Springs, and then just kind of worked um, those accounts. And what I found at the time is I was selling, in those other territories, selling a lot of production, kind of the bigger, heavier hitting machines for Rico. And I had a couple mentors at the time, and one mentor was like, "Hey, stop doing the sales manager thing. Just do production. It pays more. Come work for me." And then my boss, who I worked for, is like, "No, don't do that. I don't want to lose someone I don't have to manage." Because he basically met with me once a week, and from there it was like, go do your thing, and the numbers were there. So um, he didn't want to lose a good employee. He was managing his teams pretty well. Another guy wanted to get someone that had experience. So it was kind of this funny thing. People were fighting over me. Um, Ended
It's a
up
nice
just
feeling,
staying as a
right?
sales manager. What's that?
It's a nice feeling, right?
Yeah, it was a nice feeling. So just kind of stayed in that, but I was still selling a ton of production. I think it was probably 30 or 40% of my number. And one of the things I did is I just kind of self-taught myself. And I think, back then they had training programs, but really if you wanted to learn something, it was kind of figure it out, do it yourself. So I did. I learned the ins and outs of production, the machines, the specs. And so a lot of times when I was going into these large accounts, I could talk to it very intelligently. And so Learned it pretty well. About, I want to say, about 7 or 8 years later, kind of into that, Rico started hearing rumblings and they laid off a bunch of people.
Hmm.
So they just, I want to say they cut like 60, 70% of their staff. And so I went from being like regional sales manager to having no team. In that time, I think I spent a year. I spent, honestly, the funny thing was Rico just said, "Don't worry about your job. Just kind of get your deals in you need to get in." So I think that summer of 2018 or 2019, I didn't do anything. Like like they're like, "Hey, just take the summer off. You've already hit your quota." So for like 3 months, I just worked from home and you know kind of sold a few deals here and there. But they were so in such disarray. It was really weird. So still selling a lot of production, kind of did that. And at that point, then I was covering South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, and they just basically stretched these territories, right? So that was really fun and but also bizarre. About that time, I started getting some recruiting. I probably have my dates wrong in this actually. Um,
It all
about
blurs
that
together
time,
at some point. It's all just the time
yeah, it all
before.
it all merges together. Now I think about it, I think it's like this may have been like 2016 or 2017. Um, about that time, Xerox Direct came calling. I think I did 2 interviews and was hired to do selling production. And at the time, they had what's called the Tiger program. And the Xerox Tiger program was selling the higher end devices. So they had like the three I's, which was iGen, which was like their main product in the production print world. And those were like 300 to $600,000 for each one.
Mhm.
The other one was Irides, and those were 150 to 300. And then Inkjet, which was like 600 to a million two. So I went from selling, $100,000, $200,000 deals to almost immediately selling like these big, presses. Um, that when you kind of first start off in the industry, looking at $300 lease payment, $200 lease payment for a machine, and kind of cobbling together a number every month. All of a sudden now I was selling, you know, 10,000, $25,000 lease payments every month. So it was a big change, um, but it was exciting too at the same point because not only am I getting a lot of really good training, and one thing I will say about Xerox, the training is incredible. They get to the point where like you're learning engineering specs from the engineers in
Mhm.
Rochester. So just kind of took all that training, and just sold in about 3 or 4 states here. A lot. I think in my almost 5 years at Xerox, I want to say that I sold close to 40 iridesces. And then on the iGens, probably like 8 to 10. So, I was
Not a bad
selling
year.
$2.5 to $3 million a year.
Right.
Um, but it was a weird kind of thing because you only sold like 6 deals a year.
Well, I mean, it's
So you
like
can
selling
imagine,
houses. You're selling these
yeah,
giant monstrosities, right? Yeah.
yeah, you're selling these very expensive, items, and it wasn't uncommon to go 3, 4 months without selling something, which is a lot different than it is today. You would just sell a big deal and then you work on the next one. Is so the sales cycles were longer, they're more complicated. You had to kind of develop a lot of expertise around it. So that was interesting. And then from there, a couple of years ago, Xerox started having, we kind of see today is the manufacturers are looking to cut costs, and so they've been reducing, right? So what's
Mhm.
happened in the last 2 to 3 years, 4 years, is all the big manufacturers, where it was 15 years ago you wanted to be working for a manufacturer. Now it's you don't want to work for a manufacturer, you want to work for a dealer. Um, so I came over to the dealer world where it's a little faster paced, a lot more flexibility, a lot more transparency. With Xerox, one thing I'll say is that great products, but it's about as transparent as a rock.
Mhm.
They didn't tell you a whole lot, but you just kind of sold and you kind of figured it out. With coming into the dealer world, it's great because especially with ABT, there's so much more um, transparency. You know what you're selling, you know what your costs are. You can be honest with your customers. And I think it's been really refreshing kind of coming from the manufacturer world where there's a lot of opacity in
Mhm.
what's happening behind the scenes to where ABT is, where you can see the prices, you can see what you're selling the customer, you can give them the actual lease rates. So it's been kind of cool. But that's kind of the quick 5 minute background, if you will.
Quick and dirty. Yeah, I like
Quick
it.
and dirty, yeah. I got
Yeah,
my
so
dates wrong though.
that's okay. That's okay, because I am not gonna go back and, like, fact check you. I'm just gonna let you go on
Okay,
this one. You know, we're just friends now. We just wanna put it
yeah,
out there, have the good
put it
fun.
out there.
What do
It's
you,
correct on LinkedIn. So
yeah, if you wanna find him on LinkedIn, Jason Rank. What is your LinkedIn? It's just Jason Rank, right? Do you have funky little
yeah, I think
symbols?
it's just Jason Rank. Yeah,
Okay, we'll add that. I'll put that in the thing so
yeah.
everyone can find you, but, so what do you love about, selling production printers? I mean, you've talked a lot about kind of like the process of your resume, but, like, what do you love
Yeah.
about it?
Well, what I love about it is it's different than selling office technology in that most people that are buying kind of the production print devices look at themselves and consider themselves manufacturers of print. There's a lot of manufacturing companies out there, there's a lot of different machines out there that are building something or automating something to create a product.
Mhm,
So when you're selling a production machine, you're selling and you're giving someone the ability to sell an end product. So I kind of look at it as selling manufacturing devices, right? Because you are in fact manufacturing print.
mhm.
And from someone from the marketing world, you do see that because um, it's funny how people 15, 20 years ago said paper's dead, it's dying, volumes are going down. And yeah, we saw that. Everybody said that the spam emails would kill direct marketing,
Mhm,
and it hasn't happened, right? We've seen an increase in direct marketing. We've seen an increase in the viability of print, and so there's been a resurgence in the last couple of years. And so it's kind of cool to be able to kind of be in that industry, selling the products that people are creating something, as opposed to just a widget where you run a TPS report and yeah, you hand someone a document that they throw away a week later, right?
mhm.
So it's kind of fun. You're in a little bit different world.
Yeah, definitely, and you and I have talked a little bit about some of the customers that you've worked with, but when you look at customers, producing things and, even some of the customers that we've gone to go see, what are, some of the cooler applications that you've seen them use in-house?
Well, there's a lot of cool applications. I mean, I think what we've seen in the last couple of years is, first of all, the majority of printed pages are printed offset,
Mhm.
um, but we're starting to see a lot more personalization and digitalization of those assets, right? So if you're marketing to someone, whether it be a car dealership, a church, or you're going directly to people, you've got about 5 seconds to catch their attention, right? Because they're
Right.
going to get a piece in the mail, they're going to look at it, and I think, and this may be changed, but I think it takes 7 times for someone to
Yes,
see something before
7
they
prints.
they recognize it. And if they have that need, then they'll buy it, right? And you see, the online marketers do it. You see the physical marketing happening. Um, so the cooler applications are when you're seeing some of the personalization, which is the variable data. And I actually look at direct mail and I look at it and go, okay, this is crap, this is good, this is crap, this is good. So the direct mail applications where it's looking at your demographics, looking at where you're living, looking at potentially what you do for a living, and then sending stuff that's very very focused to you. And
Mhm.
it's cool on print. It's a little creepy on the social media side, right?
Right. Yeah, I
You
agree.
know, you
How
you're
much do you
talking
need to know about me, really?
yeah, you're talking around your Alexa like, oh, I should really get that storage thing for my kid's Xbox, and all of a sudden you're getting ads on your phone about storage things. It's like, okay,
Right.
what's going on here? But from the print side, that's really cool. The other applications that are neat is that you know um, a lot of people are trying to just there's a lot of in COVID we saw a lot of packaging growth, right? So whether it's short run digital packaging, whether it's small packaging, so you see production print devices and graphic devices. You now have a whole world where if you have a decent bit of knowledge, you can create packaging, whether it's package for golf balls, packaging for sending candy out, You can do a lot of that in house, and it's relatively easy with a little bit of expertise. And so being able to see kind of how that's happening today, it's really neat. So you could be a small company and you want to send out postcards, you want to have a little bit of packaging for your product, you could do it. So
Mhm.
it's much more accessible, whereas years ago it was not accessible.
Right, right, and especially, I've seen a lot of programs just from the marketing side of it, that help you with that personalization, help you with the
Hmm.
creativity, so even if you don't have your own in-house marketing team, you can
Right,
still do all of those things, print it in-house, and get it out without necessarily needing, the 4 different, hats within a marketing team.
right. Yeah, and so I think you see a lot of small businesses. I think still, yeah, I think Facebook's biggest revenue, I think, is small businesses, where it's
Mhm,
Facebook Marketplace or running their back end through Shopify. So you're seeing small businesses are starting up and they're able to kind of figure that out,
mhm,
which is a big deal without having to go. It used to be if you wanted to create a custom box, it would be so expensive, right? Because you had to hire a packaging company. They're looking for $10,000 upfront cash, and then you have a garage full of boxes, right? And hopefully your business goes off or you throw the money away.
right, right. But speaking of that, a lot of businesses are doing a lot of outsourced marketing materials.
Hmm.
And one thing that we've kind of talked about, at least you and I have talked about, is bringing some of those things in-house and the cost
Hmm.
savings. Can you
Right,
talk about that a little bit and how you've seen that impact things? Because I think, as you're a small business owner, you're trying to do so many things anyway, that it's a
right.
little intimidating to say, okay, now I want to bring all of my marketing materials in house so I can manage that from here too and all the other things.
Sure.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so that's been kind of the big thing, is that there's at some point there's going to be a break even of, okay, do I outsource this to a traditional commercial printer or do I bring it in? And what you'll see, and we've seen it in our own office, and I think our vendors see it, right, where, hey, the vendor's gonna send you 10,000 pages of marketing material, and then by the way, after 6 months, it's no longer good, right? It's
Mhm,
obsolete. And what we see today is just the speed of technology, the speed of information, is that something can be very, current, very vital right now, but then, you know, January, it's not. And
right.
so we see a lot of people that are printing, spending a significant amount of money on print, and then all of a sudden they realize they're throwing all this stuff away. And they look at, oh, it's a sunk cost. But when you start digging into it and show them some of the ease of use of bringing in some of those marketing materials in house and printing, they can print ahead or they can print on demand. The print on demand um, is really successful for a lot of companies, a lot of organizations, a lot of churches, because they can print what they need, and if they run out, they can print a few more, right?
Mhm,
It doesn't need to be, hey, I'm going to send this out to the printer. I'll get it back in a week, and I run out, so I've got to wait another week. It can be on demand. It can be low cost, and generally speaking, if you're printing a certain amount of volume or um, print, it will break even at a relatively easy amount. And then technically, the way we look at it for a customer would be, hey, if your budget to print is X amount of dollars, here's what we can do to bring it in house. It's going to save anywhere from 20 to 30% or more.
mhm. I think it's great. So you were talking about, churches. I know churches tend to print massive amounts.
Yeah.
What kind of like you said, 20 to 30%, is that typical for churches too?
Yeah, it depends on, as churches we see grow, they'll do a lot of printing, right? A lot of it is outsourced. I know that in my area, we get a lot of 6x9 type advertisements, or the churches are sending out saying, "Hey, come here. Here's our programs," and they're consistently sending those out.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of churches look at that and go, well, "That's really way too hard for us. We don't know how to get it cut." People still think of the old guillotine cutters where you
Right.
know, they're they're chopping with the guillotine. They're like, there's no way we're going to be able to do that. And I think with a lot of the products out there, not just for print, but then automation,
Mhm.
showing them where they can bring that in will save a ton of money, because with a little bit of investment through a lease, it's really not. It would save a ton of money. It's not a ton of money up front, if any at all. Um, Being able to bring that stuff in house is a significant savings, and for churches, that money's not saving for profit. It's money going somewhere else, and maybe it's needed more. Whether it's food
Right.
bank, whether it's going to be, some missions, or it's scholarships for kids to go to VBS. Hey, can we bring that money back in? Show you how to do it, make it easy, and try and make it what I call green button go, which is you design it, you press a button, and it's
Mhm.
done, right? And then just take it to the post office. Um, so if you can reallocate that money and that savings to other things that are more mission important for a church or a school, that's a big deal.
Mhm. And a lot of churches are schools, so that kinda ties in
Yeah,
nicely. Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
absolutely does.
And then you get them a Formex, mailing machine, and then they're good to go with that too, right? The
Yeah, and
mailing
there's yeah,
machines.
the good thing is the ABT, we can sell it all. It's like we can walk you from the creation to the variable data to the printing to the cutting to the mailing.
Mhm,
And it's a pretty fairly streamlined process. And I think that as people, I would say 15 years ago, some of the more technologically progressive churches were doing it, and we're seeing the kind of that changeover now where churches are
mhm,
saying, hey, a lot of our people are already doing creative things. And you'll see churches will have a creative ministry person, they'll have a video person, they'll have different positions they didn't have 15 years ago.
mhm.
It may have been maybe one marketing person that kind of did it all. Now they're
Right.
specializing in graphic design and video and online communications, that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, in my background, in the Springs, you've got these mega churches, right?
Hmm.
So not only are they doing, your typical Sunday bulletin, but and this is I hate to harp on churches or spend time on churches specifically, but they also do the posters, they do the event posters, they do everything else. So I guess one thing I did want to ask you about or kind of go deeper with is the different kind of materials that can be used in some of these production printers. Just for those people who maybe aren't doing it yet, but still have the aspiration,
Hmm.
maybe they've got 3 other or 4 other partners that they're partnering with to get these
Sure,
materials managed. You wanna go into that?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of interesting because probably in the last 5 years, you've seen a massive investment in what they call substrates or printing materials. And you've got kind of in the printing industry, you've got basically two to three kind of components, right? You're going to have a cut sheet, which is your traditional, we're putting ink on paper. And then you've got, roll to roll or wide format, which is going to be able to print on different things like vinyls and PVC substrates, window clings, a lot of different materials. And then you have kind of your flatbeds, which are printing on, hard objects, whether that's, plywood, for example, or aluminum. Coroplast. So there's a lot of different things you can print on. That's kind of three devices, but specifically from, cut sheet devices today, the technology has progressed so much more in the last 5 years than where it was 5 years ago. Today, you can print on, I had a vendor that I've worked with, and they created a limestone paper. So it was
Mhm,
actually crushed limestone that went into the paper, and the device could print on it. It was pretty thick, but just kind of um, different texture, different feel.
mhm,
You can also, because the printers nowadays used to be just be CMYK, now you're having the I guess the adding of white and different other colors, white, gold, silver. And so you can print on black paper, blue paper, red paper, and you can print on those and get just amazing images, which make your marketing pop. And then, on the wide format side, obviously vinyls, banner material, window clings, um, you know, uh, car wrap materials. There's a lot of things you can do, and you're seeing people that are getting out of design school understanding this stuff up front. So it's kind of
mhm,
neat to see, the paper industry has kind of pivoted in the last probably 10 years to kind of have a lot more besides your 20 or 28-pound bond paper, to just thousands of different SKUs from cardstock to, like I said, limestone to vinyl, to transparencies, you name it, it's out there. And the
mhm.
devices, because of the technology they've invested into, can print on it all.
Nice, nice, and I think what's fun and at least interesting, and I'm always intrigued by it is that, when you're looking and you're shopping and you're trying to decide on which printers are gonna be the ones for your
Mhm.
office, you can always bring them in to demo with our team, and our team will
Right.
give you those samples, and I love that because it's fun, and I don't always think of all the things that we can use it for, so it's kind of entertaining to see what colors come out if you can get that brand color with the fiery or
Yeah.
whatever it takes to get, exactly the product that you envision, it can come to
Mhm.
life.
Yeah, and the good thing about automated business technologies is we're fairly vendor agnostic, right? If you work for a manufacturer, you know, regardless of the application, the manufacturer's product was the right fit
Mhm.
because
Exactly.
that's what you sold. So if you're working for Rico or you're working for KM or you're working for Xerox, no matter what the application is, it's going to be that brand, right? So, there's with us having the ability to sell, HP, Canon, Xerox, Epson, you name it. We've got 4 or 5 different vendors, and Kyocera as well. You have the ability to put them in the right fit. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to always be Xerox or Canon. It
Right.
could be, hey, I've got a situation where for your cut sheet, it's going to be a Xerox production press, but then for your wide format graphics needs, it could be Canon. So we kind of get the best of both worlds where we can say, hey, based on your application, this is going to be the right fit for you. It's not going to be a one size fits all. It's going to be, hey, we've got multiple widgets we can move into your application to make it work.
Nice, nice. Do you have a favorite customer story, a favorite one where you went in, gave them exactly what they wanted, you were impressed with it too?
Yeah, I won't give out customer's name, but I had this customer that said, hey, we've been working on a project for 3 or 4 years. It was this gentleman and his two business partners. It was a very specific application. They said, "Hey, we want to get pricing on this device we saw online in China,
Mhm,
and it can do this." And I was like, "That's not the right application." Um, and we can't. No one can support it, right? You would buy something
mhm.
online, and I think it was $25,000 for this particular device. And I said, "Hey, hold on. Let me understand the application and how you would actually do it." What they were doing is creating labels that needed to be printed. Very simple, super simple, right? I think it was labels for HVAC, commercial HVAC, right? So if you had a gas pipe, you had to tag it with a green or red for, water, blue for waste. And I probably have this completely wrong. But we were able to basically help them design a proof of concept printing on a roll-fed device that was vinyl, that had a self-adhesive, that was air egress, so it would go on easily. We helped them design the file in Illustrator. One of the tips we gave them was, hey, not just have the tag that you're going to print, but also put the QR code on there with your directly to your website plus your logo on there. And they kind of redesigned it, and they were able to make a relatively small investment. And they've been off and running for 18 months, and they're doing really well. So they're
Mhm.
literally just printing these kind of labels, selling them in the industry, and there was like no competition. I want to say there was like 2 or 3 big companies in the U.S. who was doing this, and they've grown this business from the ground up, zero to now. I don't know what their total revenue is, but it was pretty cool just to kind of see them from the creation, show them how to do it, get them the devices to be able to do it, and they're off and running.
That's awesome. I love those kind of stories, especially, new businesses. I think it's fun when
Yeah,
you got this idea and you're a solopreneur, you're an entrepreneur, you've got your small, tiny team, and you've got this big
right.
vision. I think it's
Yeah,
amazing to watch that come to life.
yeah. It's neat, and they just print 3 to 4 days a week, and then they ship the other couple days.
Nice.
So
That's perfect.
it's a lot of
So,
fun.
without tooting your own horn, but I'm gonna ask you to toot your own horn.
Okay,
There's value in experience. So,
sure.
when there's a lot of teams out there, a lot of people who are selling copiers, a lot of people who are selling
Yep,
printers who,
yep,
you never want to go into a business and say, I don't really know because I'm kind of new at this. Um,
sure.
but given your experience and given looking at teams that are out in the field today, especially in Colorado, can you talk a little bit about the value of experience and just kind of, what what it saves you in long-term investment to have the right team working with you on these projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the biggest thing is when you start getting into some of these, the production print and graphic printing industries, and these are people that are buying equipment to manufacture something, right?
Mhm,
And there are a lot of companies out there that can sell the product, they can service the product just fine, but they may not understand all the different moving parts inside of a printing organization. And so I think it takes a lot of time to learn it. It's almost like it's a lot of it is on the job training. You're learning from learning from manuals, you're learning from experience, you're learning from mentors, you're learning from other business owners how they do things. But I think if you have that experience and have the knowledge of how things work, it's much easier to understand their pain points and how to help customers solve those pains. And sometimes, you'll talk to one customer and you're like, "Oh my God, these people have got it figured out."
mhm.
And then you'll talk to another customer and you say, "Hey, I know this other customer is doing this. Let me explain how they're doing it, and you can help change how they do their business." So I think that's neat. Having the ability that ABT does, having the expertise resource with not just myself, but our analyst team, our software team, and our partners, it brings a lot to the table because ultimately what you're doing is you can understand their business, you can understand their pain points, and you can help them solve them. And a lot of times it's not even selling them anything. It's just like, "Hey, have you tried this?" And hopefully that relationship builds that trust. And we earn our reputation. Our
Mhm.
goal is to earn our reputation one page at a time. And so if we're doing that on a daily basis, it's going to help the customer. And ultimately, as an organization like ABT, it's going to benefit us in the long run. We are a business. We want to be profitable. And I think we got to build trust to do that.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Okay, so let's just switch to the personal stuff. Tell me,
Okay.
a little bit about your family. Like, you're from here, correct?
Sort of from here.
Sort
I've been
of.
here for 24 years, I think, 99.
Uh-huh.
So almost 25 years. Um, let's see. I've got four kids, so I've got a lot of little kids out there running around. So on the weekends, half the time it is being a chauffeur.
Mhm.
My wife's name is Snow, and so she is a red-haired kind of genius. I kind of call her.
That's
I
awesome.
used to call her Dr. Snow because she was, so much smarter than I am. But she and I have four kids. So we've got my oldest, Ava, who's 16 and getting ready to drive full time, which is really
Terrifying.
frightening.
Yeah.
Um, my next is Willow, and she's 13, and I think she might be a comedian in the future. I don't know yet.
I like her already.
Um, yeah, she's really big into comedy and theater and stuff like that. So she loves that. My son, who's 11 going on 12, and he's just full of energy, and every day something new. Loves to play baseball, loves to play video games, so pretty typical 11-year-old. And then I have my youngest, which is she's going to turn 4 next week, and she was kind of our little blessing baby for us. So
I have one of those. I know exactly what you mean.
so my yeah. So my wife we live in Parker, just kind of down the road from Centennial, and every weekend we're doing something, either working around the
Mhm.
house or dragging kids somewhere, and um, it's just a lot of fun every single day. So
Perfect. Perfect. Favorite food?
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. I would say I would lean towards sushi, but I'd also go on the other side of that would be steak.
Okay, surf and
So
turf. And,
yeah,
last question, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
I can't think of anything, but no, I don't think so.
Okay, then parting thoughts. What do you have left to share in parting with all of our community?
Just excited to be here at Automated Business Technologies. The transition has been fantastic. I've never seen a company more well run from an executive standpoint and just honestly transparency.
Mhm.
You don't when we go through our manager meetings, it's amazing how much they show. Xerox wouldn't show you anything. You'd see you would see like the financial reports on the typical, investor stuff. Rico kind of the same way. You didn't see into it. And I think it's really refreshing to kind of know where the company is going, where our goals are, and how everybody can impact that on a daily basis. And I'm excited to make an impact.
Well, we're excited to have you. Welcome to the team, and thank you for
Thank
taking
you.
time out of your day to sit down and chit chat with us and the rest of the
All
world.
right.
I appreciate
I
that.
appreciate it.